This is a trick question because, look, if you told me that you are going to be a baby destined to be a sort of miniature Bin Laden, then I would rather take Christopher Hitchens over Bin Laden.
Oh, thanks
a lot. It wouldn't be a close call.
God, that was like pulling teeth.
No, I was just hesitating because I don't want to write off the entire Muslim world as potential suicide terrorists, even in the infant stage. Hey, here's a Muslim baby, but it's worth less because it's going to, I think that's too harsh. I mean, there's a species of Islam I think we rightly fear, and I think we're on the same side of the aisle on that one. But I just didn't want to paint too broad a brush with the Muslim world. Is it my time?
Yeah.
What I mean is, when your turn's over, then I'll ask you questions.
Yes, sure.
It is, okay.
Yes, I believe it is yours, yeah.
Let me begin by clarifying a couple of things. You earlier referred to Charles Manson, and you said, I don't want us to treat Manson the way I want to be treated. But I think that the moral principle involved here is the following. It's not, should we treat Manson like Hitchens, but rather, we should treat Manson the way we would want ourselves to be treated if we did what he did. In other words, the moral principle here is, when it says treat others as you would wish to be treated, it's not Manson's a murderer and I'm not, obviously treat us differently, we know that. The moral principle is, obviously, put ourselves behind a veil of ignorance, in John Rawls' terms, and say, we don't know who did it. Let's say I was the guy who did it. What punishment would it be just to impose on me? Life in prison, the death penalty? Well, okay, it's not me, it's Manson. Give him that. So that's a way, ultimately, of applying, you might say, a neutral rule. So do you agree that the Manson analogy was flawed in that sense?
Then it would be, Dinesh, it would be a different rule. The rule is, do not do to another what you would not want done to yourself. I'm saying, in that, I quite agree, by the way, with your Rawlsian take, but that's evolved without any reference to any injunction about a golden rule.
You spoke about compulsory love.
Yes.
But isn't the lesson of the book of Genesis, and isn't the core principle of Christianity that God offers his love to us? Christ died for our sins, but there's nothing compulsory about it. It's completely a free choice. You have a free choice. No one's forcing you. You've chosen to reject it, but nobody made you.
Well, you can, of course, you're free to reject it. I'm here to illustrate that point to the best of my ability. But in a very large number of times and places, the price of rejecting it, or even of seeming to reject it, has been very high. And not just in the sense of eternal punishment after death, but extreme punishment and persecution during the only life one actually has. So I'm thankful, very grateful to you, naturally, for giving me my manumission. But I don't actually think I need your permission to be free on this point, or the permission from the divine either. That's being unfree. It's like saying, of course if people ask me, have we got free will, I say yes. Of course we have. We have no choice. At least I know I'm being ironic, and that the irony is somewhat at my expense. But if you say, of course we have free will because the boss says we do, you've advanced the argument not at all. It's analogous to that.
Okay, that's the end of our head-to-head session. Thank you both, gentlemen.
What? I thought he had 15.
15 minutes.
Oh, but you know what? I think we misfired a little bit in that we were initially intending to go back and forth, but we carved the time, and he took the bulk of it. Let me have a couple more questions, and then we're happy to move it.
I think he should, don't you? Yeah.
Are you happy with that, Mr. Hitchens?
Yes, I think I unintentionally overrun my time this time. Sorry.
You mentioned the issue about design, and you said that you've become kind of immune to arguments from design. So how do you think we got the universe?
Well, the term Big Bang was originally used, like the term Tory and suffragette, as a term of abuse, as a term of mockery, by Professor Fred Hoyle, who is at different times, he's a great physicist in Cambridge, who at different times has been a believer and an unbeliever. But he thought the idea that things had begun in this way was so ludicrous that he said, oh, I suppose you think it all began with some Big Bang. I think it was on a BBC discussion program.
Right,
now,
but when Hoyle acknowledged the bang, he said, I'm quoting him now, it looks like some super intellect has monkeyed with the laws of physics.
Yes.
I'm quoting Hoyle.
Right.
And you're probably familiar with the quote.
Yes, well, he's been both a believer and an unbeliever. I'm not a physicist at all. I'm a member of no school as far as this goes, but I know of no physicist who seems to need any supernatural help in explaining or for, let's say, better understanding, because we're only grazing on the very, very lower slopes and the outer limits of knowledge at the moment, that it's at all time to be able to postulate that there's a supernatural intervention involved, any more than one is required for the origin of species. Though I can't disprove that there was a divine hand involved in that too. It's just that everything operates just as well, every analysis, every explanation, without such an assumption.
Let me ask you finally about morality. You gave the example of human beings being 95% or 99% chimpanzee in terms of the similarity of genes. And yet, in the chimpanzee world, things work a little differently than the human world. You turn on the Nature Channel, you'll see that one gorilla, one ape will go into the lair of another, stupefy the rival with blows, grab the female chimp, drag her screaming and bloody to his own lair, rape her, and this is called the Nature Channel. Now, on the other hand, if you came to my house, stupefied me with blows, and did this to my wife, we'd all take a little different view of the matter. If we are merely evolved primates, where did the moral or ontological leap come from that makes two creatures almost identical genetically be assessed so differently in any moral compass that either you or I would use?
Well, I wasn't saying that we were equivalent, though. With half chromosome away, actually, is what it is with the chimpanzee. I wasn't saying that postulated an equivalence, though. Again, the example you've given isn't quite the one that I would have chosen. Somewhere in the world right now, that's happening to a human woman. Actually, quite a large number of human women, I can bet you. That's
right, but
and for the minimum 100,000, maximum 250,000 years we've been on the planet, it's happened a great deal. And whereas the chimpanzee doesn't have a torture chamber, doesn't practice genocide, doesn't make war, doesn't have the refinements of cruelty that the senior partner does. Our difference is that we are the only primates who know how to laugh. We're the only ones who definitely know we're going to die. At least I think the evidence is pretty solid that we're the only ones who know that. And we're the only ones who make gods, and we're the only ones who think we can cheat death or that an exception will be made in our own case. But it seems to me that gives us more in common with primates rather than less.
But what's in common is the behavior. The point I wanted to highlight is what's different is that in every human community, this kind of behavior would be seen as abominable. In other words, it's the moral evaluation that makes the difference. Obviously, you can find, that's why we use the term bestial conduct. You will find bestial conduct among human beings, but the difference is we assess it differently. You never get the idea that in the chimpanzee world, there's a small United Nations issuing declarations of chimpanzee rights. In fact, one of the interesting things about the debate about animal rights is that animals never seem to respect them. So the point I want to make is there is this huge ocean between the is and the ought, and it appears to be crossed only by our species. Now, doesn't that demand some kind of recognition instead of simply saying we're also capable of more evil, we're more capable of more good, and we're more capable of more evil, and we're more capable of the moral standards to know the difference. That's what makes us human.
That's fine, except that I don't think I can fully share the premise. I mean,